Today we're here to talk about the most important part of your game, the putt. Got it?
Good job.
I hate this game. All right, there's three aspects of the putt. You have your legs that set up and help you build the power. You have your arm that guides the putt to the basket. And then your wrist is what helps you actually build power into the putt. So let's talk about the legs first. Now, your legs, you can either, there's a couple different stances you can take that I've seen that works. The first one that I've seen work is a straddle stance, where you have your feet shoulder width apart, and then you just set yourself up, and the putt would be like up and down forward. Or the other feet placement you can have is inline. Now, depending on what hand you putt with, I'm a lefty, so I'm gonna have my left foot forward, right? So if I was setting up at the basket, I'd have my left foot forward, pointing towards the basket, and then I could set myself up inline to the basket. Now, if you're righty, this would just look the other way. Now, why do we have our feet like this? It's because you want to try and build power from the ground. So with an inline putt, or even straddle, I'm going to go with inline, what you do is you set if you're trying to build power on a putt, you put your weight on your back foot, and you kind of stretch that forward foot taunt, right? Building power on that back foot, and then when you're coming through, you're going to push through with your legs to build that power up. What that could look like is this, right? Pushing the power back and then coming forward. So that's the inline putt, what it looks like. With the straddle, you kind of get a little bit more power by sinking your butt down and then coming up. You sink your butt down, come up. So the next thing we need to talk about is we need to talk about what your arm is doing. So shoulder, arm, kind of all work towards the same process. What it should do with your putt is you should have your arm set up that it will guide your putt to the basket. Now, there's two different putting styles. Now, not to get term heavy on you, there's two different putting styles. There is push putt, where you build the power, or your lever, your fulcrum, if we're talking physics, is basically your shoulder. This is the point at which your arm moves. And then, so that's a push putt, and it would look like, not a push putter, but what would it look like? Look like that. A famous pro who does push putting is Ricky Wysocki. I'm sure I can include a little bit of footage of him. Then the other type of putt, instead of your arm, your shoulder being the lever, you have instead your elbow being the lever. So you might see some spin putters bring the putter into themselves like this. They might bring it down, right? But you're trying to just set your lever up so you can build power. Now, a true spin putt, like I'm thinking about like pro example Nate Sexton, would look like that. And both of these putts can work. They're both, as long as you practice, they both can be consistent. The thing is, the push putt, or using your shoulder as your lever, the thing is you miss not left and right, but you miss high or low. And then the spin putt, you would have the height, but either miss left or right. So we've talked about what your legs are doing. We've talked about what your arm is doing. Now, how about the wrist? So with your wrist, you're really trying to splay those fingers forward. It would almost look like that. You're trying to flick them out. What I almost imagine is like when you play darts, you're trying to push it out. And I mean, you can even see if I like don't use my arm at all and I'm just all wrist, I can still get the disc to the basket because the fingers are what is gonna build your power. So that's legs, arm, wrist, quick and simple, how you putt. Now, there are some more techniques I can show you guys, but let's go through common mistakes with putting. So the first one could be you might have a putt where you're ending up too hyzering or just fading at the end of the flight. What you have to do to try and fix that is just flatten your wrist out. So instead of being like down or hyzered, you just take your wrist and flip it up to flat. So instead of being here, right? Instead of being here, you're gonna just try and come flat. Oh, missed that one. So that's how you fix your wrist position. Something else to know is depending on how you putt, you can have that nose really up or really down and it affects how it flies. So if I had a putt really nose down, look like that, right? I'm pushing the front of the disc and pushing the nose way down. So these are useful if you're going, let's say you want to make sure you don't go past the basket. That's what these putts are useful for. There's also having the nose way up. So they'll be like exposing the bottom of the disc, turning that wrist back. And it looks like that. Now, problem is when you go nose up, you're gonna miss, you might miss high, it might not move enough for you, but there are situations where you'd wanna do both. Let's see those situations. For instance, right, let's say our disc was behind this tree. Now, would I wanna take an inline stance? No, right? This one might be a spot where I'd wanna straddle out to the side. The other thing is, now, do I really wanna be nose down? Maybe not. And I'm thinking I wanna be nose up because I want it to float to the basket, like so, right? So there are situations where you might have to throw inline, that you might have to throw straddle. It's kind of where the disc lands that determines it. Here we have another situation. So we have a longer putt, right, uphill. So this might be a case where you really want to get that nose up. So you would come up, through, you would, nope, it's a little far. So here's a situation where you might want to go nose down. Reason why? Well, if you look at the basket, let's say we're putting from here, we know that if we go nose up and the disc floats, it's going to go way past the basket. So here we might reduce the power a little bit so you don't go flying past. And we might take that nose and go down. That way when we putt, at least when we miss, we're not far. See, and now even if I didn't make the putt, I'm still can easily make my next putt. Your last question might be, hold on. Your last question might be, hey, okay, you've shown me like the general routine of how you putt. How do I get better? And unfortunately, the only answer is practice. Not only like physical reps, but just like mindset reps, right? Some people like myself, you think about the putt too much, where it should just be routine, right? So something you might like physically, you might set up, okay, I'm gonna practice 5 from 10 feet. Then you walk back, okay, now 5 from 15 feet, 5 from 20, 5 from 25. And you set yourself up a circuit and you consistently practice, you'll get better. Now, there's also mindset techniques too, right? So one of them that I learned is that when you set yourself up for the putt, you imagine, this is a Scott Stokely tip, you imagine the basket as just the pole. When you come down, up and down on your reach through, you're gonna just see the basket as a pole and paint it up and down. That way you're not missing left and right. That's a good mental reminder, mental rep. Another one you can do is you can imagine the smallest link on the basket. So if you picture, like, I'm looking at this basket here, the first set of chains on the left of the pole, that's where I'm going to think about my putt, and that's a spot I'm going to concentrate on. And I guess I wasn't concentrating hard enough for that one. One more. Yeesh. But if you concentrate on that spot, you should make a smaller mistake and still hit the chains, even if you miss the spot you aim for. But all in all, that's how you putt. It's pretty simple. Comes down to, okay, hey, what are my legs doing, right? Generating power from the ground, like I showed you guys. What is my arm doing? Whether you want your arm to extend from the elbow, or if you want your arm to extend from the shoulder, right? And the last thing is making sure that wrist is popping out. Those fingers are popping out and they're getting the disc to spin, because if the disc isn't spinning, you won't get any distance. So yeah, that was how to putt. I hope you guys found this helpful. Thank you.